I'm guessing, Jason, that Clemson fans don't pay a whole lot of attention to Florida State football on a regular basis. If it's not game week or they're not taking a recruit from them, something like that. But what's going on with the ACC has to be getting everyone's attention. And it just seems like Florida State, I'm thinking of it this way, like they've got all these cards in their back pocket and they just keep playing them like every so often, every few weeks saying, okay, ACC, you're not going to let us out of this. You're not going to give us a settlement. Boom, we got this one. And the latest one was this 59-page lawsuit that basically, if you really look at this, not that I read 59 pages, but man, those are some serious indictments that basically you're not dealing in good faith. You've had dealings that were not up and up in regards to looking out for the 14 schools to get us the best deal. You had other interests in mind, and that's not a good look.
Yeah, there were a lot of the fans that keep up with these kind of things. You know, the Raycom thing and John Swafford's son, that's always been a point of contention with a lot of people going back, to when it happened, because it was kind of obvious, right? You're basically giving those rights away, or the schools aren't getting anything out of them. And when you give them to Raycom like that, and John Swafford's son's a big wig over there at Raycom, so that's something that always stuck out about that television deal. It in no way, shape, or form benefits the schools financially in any way that I can tell. But it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out, because Florida State and Clemson are kind of taking two opposite approaches to this thing. Florida State's, like you say, they're putting their cards on the table. They're doing it in public. They filed lawsuits, and Clemson's just kind of doing what they do, working behind the scenes. Might let this thing play out and see what happens with Florida State, because nobody I talk to ever talks about this stuff. All you ever hear is, hey, Clemson's going to do what's best for Clemson. And it looks like, with the announcement yesterday of the advisory board, or whatever they call it, between the Big Ten and the SEC, that we're heading for that power too, probably faster than any of us originally anticipated. How we get there, I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know if anybody does this yet, but I would be beyond shocked if we got to the finish line and Clemson wasn't a part of that in some way.
Yeah. I think there's a spot for Clemson. I don't think there's any question about there's just too much value there. When I heard Raycom, I got to say, Jason, that took me back to the 80s and 90s. No knock against Raycom, but I didn't even know that they still existed. When I think Raycom, I think of all the nights when I was a 15-year-old looking for, the fifth best ACC game out there. And when I couldn't get enough of watching college basketball all night, or watching the Blue Bonnet Bowl and the Freedom Bowl and every other Outcast Bowl that was at the bottom of the line, those were on Raycom, but I didn't know that they were still kicking.
When I think of Raycom, I think of Mike Harwood. But I think they're still around in some shape or form. I see the trucks out at baseball tournaments, the Raycom trucks sometimes. I'm not an expert in all that stuff. I don't know how it all works out. They are absolutely still around somehow, some way. When I think Bally's kind of took over some of that, I don't know how it all worked, but Bally Sports kind of took over some of those games from Raycom somehow. And then, last year, those games that were going to Bally's ended up going to CW after Bally's declared bankruptcy. Again, I'm not a TV negotiations expert or anything like that, but that Raycom thing has always been a point of contention. And not just with Clemson fans, a lot of fans of teams in the ACC, it just seems so rather obvious.
Folks, if you're interested in all the situation with Florida State, and Florida State's just really out front in the news right now, but this affects on down the line, Clemson, Miami, Virginia Tech on down the line. Check out the live stream that we did the other night, because it's very interesting that I got a guy that I have brought on a couple of times. He's very gracious to say, hey, Mark, I love what you do, and I've got information. He does consulting for a lot of these groups and a lot of people connected to all this stuff. And he said the night before this advisory committee was formed, he said, there's going to be a step that's going to be announced here in the next day or two. And it's just going to be another step that's going to show us, okay, these two are separating from the other ones.
Absolutely. That's where we're headed. And I thought we've kind of been headed towards a break for a while. I just wasn't sure exactly what it would look like. I didn't know if we'd have two conferences or something similar to the NFL with everybody playing under the same umbrella in two different divisions. Still might end up that way. But it looks like we're going to a power two or whatever you want to call it, Big Ten and SEC. And it's interesting to see that they're going to kind of work together a little bit here to kind of try to take us through some of these waters that have gotten so muddied in the past couple of years. This wild, wild west formula that we're working under right now, it's not sustainable. All these administrators know that. Somebody's got to step up and do something. The NCAA has no teeth. There's nothing really they can do about it that's not going to get shot down in court. So somebody else is going to have to step up and take the reins. And it looks like these two conferences are doing that. And these are the two power players right now.
That is a great point, because there's a lot that you can read between the lines, but the two most obvious ones would be you don't read the ACC or the Big 12 in this statement. We didn't include them. And number two, that yes, you can see the litigation, all these things that are going on in our sport. Nothing's being done about it. So we're going to do something about it.
I think we're going to get to a point where the 12-team playoff at some point is probably going to just be teams from the SEC and Big Ten. Maybe not in the next 3 or 4 years, under the current deal, but at some point it's probably going to be just those two and everybody else is getting shut out. I kind of see it playing out this way. I think obviously the ACC champs getting an automatic bid right now, and the Big 12 champs getting an automatic bid right now. But if you don't get that automatic bid and you're not in the Big 10 or the SEC, even if you go 10-1 or 10, you're playing with fire. 10-2 or 11-1 or whatever, you're playing with fire. You might very well get left out. Ask Florida State.
And that's another point that was made on our live stream the other night, that the way this is headed and the numbers that they're getting back from ad agencies and the people that deal with how much money this playoff can create is that if you have a Utah-Louisville matchup in a playoff game, it's not going to be what you would get if you have, let's say, a team from the Big Ten and the SEC that would normally be left out if we just go by seedings and records. People would rather watch Penn State and Tennessee play. It's going to draw such a bigger number. So even if they're in the fourth place position in those conferences, just flat out going to make more money.
100%. I'm telling you, if you don't win the ACC or the Big 12, you're going to be holding your breath, because you're probably going to be hard pressed to get one of those at-large bids. Those are probably going to go all to SEC and Big 10 teams. And, if the fans of those schools that are getting kind of left out, they're not going to be happy. And that's kind of how I see this thing playing out.
Jason Priester, allClemsonTigers.com. Get on over there. Check out the latest in Clemson football and basketball. Jason, we'll send you off to the basketball game. Hope you get a dub today.
They need one in a bad way, man. They welcome Virginia here to town. Tip off at 2:00.